What is going on, everybody, and welcome back. It is week 2. We made it. Pat yourselves on the back. Week 1 felt like 3 weeks between all the poor performances, bad quarterback play, bad offensive line play, and the gift of the Christian McCaffrey injury to cap it all off at the end of the week. It was a wild week 1. We are here for week 2 to get you prepared. What?
Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.
I'm Graham Barfield, one of the co-owners here at Fantasy Points, and appreciate you checking out this video. As always, make sure before you are setting your lineups, you're checking Fantasy Points' excellent projections led by projections czar analytics guru Chris Wecht. Chris has done an excellent job with projections. And yeah, we basically spend every waking second of every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday to get those projections as tight as possible. Those numbers are really the guide here. I also write a weekly start sit column over at FantasyPoints.com. It is free. I walk through the entire slate, go game by game, talk through all of the fantasy relevant players, their stats, their matchup, their performances. And it's especially important this week because I spent a lot of time on what's real, what wasn't real, what should we look at moving forward. For this show, as always, we kind of avoid the most obvious plays, right? Like I think this week there's 4 or 5 really clear, awesome running back plays. Receiver is super deep from top to bottom. Quarterback and tight end are probably the only 2 tricky spots, although there's a clear, top 10 at quarterback right now. Tight end was a nightmare week 1, obviously. So let's get to it. Let's talk quarterbacks first. Obviously, Jared Goff had a little bit of a bad outing. It was kind of up and down for him. He made a couple of nice throws to Jameson Williams, also had a couple of misfires. He came up small, was the quarterback 18 in week 1. I liked him as a low-end quarterback 1. However, this spot is even better. Goff at home always is intriguing. Over his last 3 seasons, Goff averages 21 fantasy points per game at home. That dips to 13.5 on the road. That's basically the difference between Goff being a top 5 fantasy quarterback and a QB3 in fantasy, basically. Detroit is heavily favored to win this game. They have the highest implied team total by nearly 3 points over Kansas City. And the Bucs are a little bit banged up in secondary. They're going to be without their stud safety, Antoine Whitfield. They're going to have Jamel Dean, their best corner, but I think they're going to miss a couple of their depth pieces in quarterback. Anyway, Goff, really good play, really good game against the Bucs. With that in mind, let's stick with it. Last week, Baker Mayfield was terrific. Obviously, everybody kind of had some questions about, how he'd perform without Dave Canales. This offensive line is, still a kind of a question mark in the interior. No, Baker Mayfield came out and absolutely shredded Washington, nuked a really good matchup. And, I think when we're looking at some of these I wouldn't say bottom tier because that's not fair to Mayfield, but these guys are always on the QB1 fringe, right? Like Mayfield doesn't run, Goff doesn't run. Those guys that run just have such a higher floor. Mayfield blowing up in a great matchup is not something to hang against him. In fact, I think it's just a bull signal that he's locked in. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, both healthy. They've got Jalen McMillan, who looks like a potential future stud. And the Bucs are going to have to throw a ton in the spot. Detroit was not a very good secondary last year. They've thrown some pieces together in the secondary. They came out and played pretty well in that first half. The second half, though, for Detroit was rough. Stafford ended up completing 69% of his passes. Nice. For 317 yards. Needed nearly 50 attempts to get there, but I think it's kind of a similar game script for the Bucs, right? Like they're big dogs going into Detroit. Mayfield should have to throw a ton. He's got 2 really good receivers. This game has a huge total. Yeah, really like Mayfield as a streamer this week. We also like Matt Stafford last week as a streamer. He was fine. It was a bad slate for quarterbacks. If you didn't have Jaden Daniels or Anthony Richardson or Josh Allen or Mayfield, basically every quarterback was kind of the same. They scored between 20 and 14 fantasy points. Stafford was right in the middle. He finished his QB 12. Really, his only mistake in that game, y'all, was the interception at the end of the first half. That was not a great decision on his part. However, I'm not going to hold that against him because the large sample on Stafford has been terrific over his last 8 games. Remember, Stafford missed some time with that thumb injury. He hurt his thumb in the middle of last year. His last 8 games since he came back from that thumb injury, he's basically been one of the 3 or 4 best quarterbacks in football. In that span, Stafford's averaging 298.6 passing yards per game. Come on, we can get him to 300. In that span, 8 yards per pass attempt, 18 to 4 touchdown to interception ratio. 2 things that are concerning here. Obviously, Puka Nakua's injury, not having an absolute stud opposite of Kupp. Probably going to ding the ceiling a little bit here. And then they have Rams offensive line has been like a Final Destination movie basically since August. They're going to miss 2 of their starters this week. They're going to have to shuffle some pieces. However, there's one coach and one quarterback tandem that can kind of figure out the offensive line and learn how to maneuver and just kind of figure out how to basically run an offense through Cooper Kupp in a quick timing offense. It's going to be McVay and Stafford. We saw it last week. According to Fantasy Points data, Stafford's time to throw was 2.47 seconds. It was the 10th quickest last week for week 1, and that's atypical for Stafford because he's typically trying to hold onto the ball and make big plays, push the ball downfield. Not now. He is looking to get the ball quick, get his first read, get it out. Stafford's a really good play this week. Obviously, big game total there with the Cardinals. Should be a great game. Cardinals are a favorite for the 4th time since 2022. They're 1.5-point favorites, so Rams are going to have to chuck. Like that game a lot. All right, let's keep it moving to running back. Like I said at the top, I think there is just like some very clear, obvious plays this week. We don't really need to spend a whole lot of time talking through basically the top 15 in projections. I just think you're just locking those guys in this week. Our top 15 in projections, just no-brainer plays. So let's start getting into that RB2 pile. As a former J.K. Dobbins stan, correction. It's Mr. J.K. Dobbins, sir. That's for Edwin. Mr. J.K. Dobbins, sir. Look, I was a big Dobbins fan coming out of college. Obviously, the injuries have been horrific for him. However, man, I was so excited to see the explosion game. Did not see it coming. 10 carries, 135 yards. Meanwhile, he had a 62-yard run, 63-yard run, something like that. He was ripping off chunk gains. Tied Saquon Barkley for the fastest top speed by a running back, according to Next Gen Stats. Both of them hit 19.9 miles per hour. Listen, I don't think Dobbins is like some league winner, right? I think we're going to see some sort of committee throughout the whole season. I definitely don't think we can see Dobbins taking like 20 carries a game as a part of this run-heavy offense. Gus Edwards is always going to be involved. He's already the 1A, though. 59% of the snaps to 41% last week for Dobbins. 59% for Dobbins, 41% for Edwards. He also outsnapped Edwards in the red zone, and this could not possibly be a better spot. Obviously, the Panthers just got absolutely steamrolled last week by the Saints. They're going to be without their best defensive lineman and Derek Brown. Obviously, they traded away Brian Burns. Panthers have the worst defense in the NFL. Dobbins is not must start, but I'm higher on him than projections. I just think he has a ton of upside this week. I don't know his upside for the rest of the season, but for this week, this is an absolutely amazing spot. Moving on here, I think this Broncos backfield is kind of what I expected to a certain degree. I was pretty concerned about Williams coming into this season. Listen, I like Javonte Williams a lot coming out. Obviously, he had a horrendous knee injury 2 seasons ago, multiple ligament injury. Really struggled last year. I think he looks fine. The problem is I just did not foresee Jaleel McLaughlin taking over as like the 1A here. I thought this would be clearly Williams on early downs, McLaughlin kind of mixing in on passing downs. Williams did out-snap McLaughlin last week, but McLaughlin got more touches. He got more carries. He had 10 carries to Williams' 8. He also had more targets. Audric Estime is on IR, the rookie. He has an ankle injury. The good news is it does kind of clear the way long-term, I guess, at least for the next 4 or 5 weeks, for this backfield just to be these 2 guys. We're not going to have to worry about a third. But, man, Denver really struggled week 1. They have the 3rd lowest implied total this week. Steelers have a very, very good defense. I'm just completely avoiding this Broncos backfield until somebody breaks away here. I just think these guys are both low ceiling, like RB3s at this point. Pretty tough run out if you did draft Javonte. All right, moving on to receivers. If I made one mistake, actually, correct that. If I have one regret from last week, it was listing Jameson Williams as a sit. Go ahead, throw your tomatoes. Curse me out in the comments. It was a bad call. I said I just wanted to see it with JMO, right? Like, we knew he'd get a full-time role. We knew that he'd be on the field a lot more. We knew it was a pretty good matchup too. Rams corners are, obviously nothing to be afraid of. We had just never seen him earn targets in a full-time role. Last year, he got, big role in the playoffs, didn't get the targets. It doesn't matter anymore. Week 1 was about as bullish as you could possibly get for Jameson Williams. I was in on the talent, drafted him a ton. I don't want to show you my JMO bags in best ball because I don't want to curse it. However, man, the talent is there. It's all there. 90% route share week 1, easily a career high. 9 targets week 1, easily a career high. I'm not casting this away as like a sample size thing. I think this dude has always been incredibly talented. He's just had a string of really bad luck to start his career. Maybe he wasn't all the way there, locked in his rookie season. Dan Campbell has spent the entire summer hyping him up. Obviously, Campbell just does not seem like a BSer. This is legit. Jameson Williams is at worst a really good wide receiver 3 flex play this week. I think there's potential for more. Now, I'm not concerned about Amon-Ra, St. Brown, or Sam Laporta like long-term. However, St. Brown has been living with a 30% target share for back-to-back seasons. I don't really think we can expect that for the rest of the year. This is legitimate with Williams, man. He's got a really trustworthy quarterback in Goff. Maybe one of the top 3 offensive, definitely not maybe, definitely one of the top 3 offensive coordinators in the game. Man, JMO is a really exciting play this week against, like I said, with Goff, a Bucs secondary that's kind of reeling a little bit. All right, moving on here. Tank Dell had a little bit of a bad opener. I think some of the usage for him was very, very bullish. I really wanted to see, okay, who's going to be the Texans slot receiver? That's Stephon Diggs. Last week, Diggs, according to FantasyPoints data, ran a route inside nearly 2/3 of the time, 66%, just under 66%. That's actually quietly huge for Tank Dell. I thought Dell would maybe be the slot. It's not going to happen, though. Dell is going to be a downfield vertical threat. He's going to have games like this where he goes like 3 for 40 and just misses on a few big plays with Stroud. However, no receiver had a better average separation score on their routes lined up outside last season than Tank Dell. Dell was really good in the slot, too. He was like 8th best by ass. But Dell is one of the best separators in the game. He's going to be outside more. I think Bears secondary and Bears defense, I maybe said this last week. I definitely said it on the matchup point show. Bears defense is the most improved unit in the league. Jalen Johnson's a stud. They've figured out their pass rush a little bit. Really, really talented secondary, really well-coached team. I just like Dell's long-term upside. I think this is a spot where Stroud kind of gets him going a little bit. And like I said, this new role where Dell's truly being trusted as a downfield field stretcher in this offense. Yeah, I think Dell's going to be just fine long-term here. I'm not going to say you should outright sit George Pickens in every single league that you have, right? He was awesome week 1. 6 for 85, 7 targets. Tough matchup, too. He beat A.J. Terrell. However, this is a really, really difficult spot. Broncos' Pat Surtain is back. He struggled a little bit last year. Maybe he was playing through some injuries, or maybe that defense was just so bad last season. He got the bag this offseason, and he came to play last week against DK Metcalf. Surtain, true shadow coverage. He was on DK Metcalf on every single route last week. He gave up 5.9 fantasy points. DK Metcalf, Pickens are very similar players in the way they win. Obviously kind of longer, lankier, speed guys trying to get down the field. Surtain's skill set is like perfect for George Pickens. I think this is a call you have to make in your league. Like if you have a receiver quite like Jameson Williams, or maybe somebody that just has a slightly higher projectable floor than Pickens, I think this is just a case-by-case basis with him, but I'm a little lower on George Pickens this week. I think this is something projections probably won't pick up on as well. Obviously, the Steelers' passing game is going to run through Pickens, but I expect Surtain to be on him on every single play. And, if you guys have been listening to me for years, you know how I feel about cornerback play. I think in general, we massively overrate it. There's like 2 or 3 corners every year where I'm like, okay, this guy's a stud. He's actually going to have a chance to really lock down this receiver. Surtain is certainly one of those guys. Again, case-by-case basis, but I think Pickens is more of a back-end wide receiver 3 this week. And I'm looking for a little bit more of a higher floor in that spot. All right, y'all, we got to talk tight end. I don't want to do it. You don't want to do it. Last week was atrocious. We say this every year. We think we know more than we actually do. It's especially true at tight end. I wasn't totally convinced that this was going to be some like great bounce back season for tight ends. I just saw it as like a big flat top with Kelsey and McBride and Laporta and Andrews. Well, all of them now have massive, I shouldn't say massive, but reasonably sized red flags surrounding them. Obviously, Kelsey, we knew that they brought in more receivers to kind of take away targets from him. Mark Andrews just has Isaiah Likely absolutely break out. Trey McBride, long-term, obviously Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to earn his targets. We just talked through Jameson Williams. It's just kind of like all these tight ends have warts. Like, yeah, they're probably the second target on the offense. Like, yeah, there's some touchdown upside, but no one, I don't think there's going to be a single elite tight end this year. We'll see a player get hot late in the year, like always, score a couple touchdowns and end up, really kind of separating themselves. But I think for the start of this year, man, we're seeing kind of a little bit what I expected, a big, flat, kind of top 8. And then you're dealing with the streamers. Use our projections. I will encourage you heavily just to go in, blindly follow the projections. We have been tweaking tight end projections all week just based on usage, based on expected target share. The top 8 is very clear. I think you can include Dalton Kincaid and make it 9. He's on that low end. He's always been on that lower end for us. Dalton Kincaid is averaging 7.1 PPR points per game in 15 career games with Dawson Knox, man. It's like everywhere you look, we expected Kincaid to get a bigger role. He did. He had a pretty high route share, but didn't get the targets. And this is just more concern, him sharing with Dawson Knox. That top 8, top 9, if you include Kincaid, McBride, Kelsey, Laporta, Ingram, Andrews, Kittle, Pitts. I would put Likely in there to make it 10. Number 11, Colby Parkinson. This guy is largely picked up this week off waiver wires. I haven't checked the Yahoo or ESPN numbers, but at last check, I think he was still available in over half of those leagues. Obviously, in deeper leagues, he's probably not available, especially in tight end premium. But Parkinson is a really, really good play, y'all. Puka Nacua is on IR. I just spent through 3 or 4 minutes waxing poetic about how good Matthew Stafford is right now. I just want attachment to Stafford. Parkinson is going to be out there on the field on every single play. Only George Kittle had a higher route share last week, according to FantasyPoints data. Anytime a tight end has a route share that's, just all pass plays where the player was in a route. Anytime a tight end is above like 80% or even like 75%, that's really damn good. Parkinson was well above 80%. Week 1, found a couple targets. I think he finds a couple more with Nacua on IR. Pretty good spot too. Cardinals, I think they've kind of figured out how to defend tight ends a little bit better. Wasn't the case for the last couple of years. Still a good spot. The position is extremely thin. Parkinson is a good play if you need a streamer for Jake Ferguson or David Njoku. All right, when I listed out those top 8 tight ends, you might have noticed I left one off. It was Brock Bowers. Bowers in week 1 maybe had like the most exciting usage of any tight end that, I think we were kind of expecting, obviously, him to be a full-time player. We're expecting him to get the versatile usage. However, man, leading the team in targets in your first game with Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers around, man, oh man. 25% of the first read targets in week 1. Devontae Adams had 30%, so Bowers had 1 fewer. Again, like I said, the usage was awesome, man. It was really good. 73% route share week 1. That's about exactly where you want to see it. It was 12th best. Obviously, there's room for growth there. I don't know if we're going to see the Laporta type rookie season. I think that'd be a really, really aggressive call. I liked Bowers as the tight end 1 in Dynasty. I'm a retired Dynasty bro, as our guy Thomas Tipple knows, but I still had Bowers at tight end 1. The talent is insane. I did not expect this week 1, though. Like, I thought he'd push Devontae Adams down a little bit, even more. It's going to happen even quicker than I thought. This is nothing against Adams, man. He's still a very talented player, still a very good separator, even at his age. That said, though, Bowers' season is real. I don't think Baltimore is a very good matchup for Bowers. You know, they obviously have very, very athletic linebackers and safeties. However, they did struggle a little bit last week, gave up a little bit of production, 6 for 71, 6 catches, 71 yards against Chiefs tight ends. I'm not saying Bowers is like must start, but like in this environment with tight ends where like you look around and there's nothing but like dust and tumbleweed and like, you know, you're hoping for a Taysom Hill touchdown. Yeah, man, you're playing Brock Bowers everywhere you drafted him. He's a really good play this week. We have him at 8 in our projections. I think that's about right, but I could see Bowers being, you know, top 6, top 5 here pretty quickly. Just like I said, nature of the position these days. So if you drafted Brock Bowers, pat yourself on the back, man. Especially right now, because it looks like you were just gifted, you know, round 9, round 10, at worst a really strong back end tight end 1. Obviously, Gardner Minshew is not the most inspiring quarterback under center. However, this usage is bananas. Brock Bowers is already really good. Prolific collegiate player. We're all in. Guys, good luck in week 2. I hope that you stashed Jordan Mason everywhere. I hope that you absolutely have Chris Godwin and Rashee Rice in every single league. And I hope that you have an excellent week 2. We will see you guys in the next video, and good luck. We'll see you at the top of the leaderboards.